Good evening. Welcome, welcome. So there's a story that sometimes gets told. It's in the Pali Canon. I kind of like this story. Briefly, it goes like an individual is wandering in the forest, and we could say, stumble upon like this, what looks like a path. Like they could tell that maybe all the jungle plants aren't quite the same in this little area. So in my mind, they're like hacking away, and they discover, oh yeah, this is actually a paved road, or was a paved road. And they follow it and hacking their way through. And they get to what was an ancient city. And with a little bit of work, they start to see, oh yeah, like here's a wall of a part of the city, and looks like of some ponds or lakes or something like this. So they don't clear the entire city, but enough to get a sense of what was there. So, wow, what a discovery. And then they go back and tell the king, hey, I discovered this old ancient city that's with this old ancient road, and tells the king that, you should maybe excavate this road and this city. And the king does, and then starts to inhabit the city and lives happily ever after. It's one of those kind of stories. And so in the Pali Canon, the Buddha is telling a version of the story. Of course, I'm doing a summary of it, adding a little bit of some of my interpretation in there. But the Buddha, he's saying that actually this is a story where he is the one who made this discovery. And so he's pointing to, and this path that he found is the Eightfold Path. And this beautiful ancient town is freedom. Freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion, freedom from suffering. And the king that he goes to tell, and that clears the path and inhabits it, is us. We're the royalty. We're the I don't know, majestic in some kind of way. I kind of like this. It's not like, oh, we're those poor people that have to have everything figured out for us. But no, he's like, hey, go there and you can do some of this work and you can live in this city too. So there's this sense of there's this path that goes to a destination. Like that you could say a journey. And we often say this, right? We have this expression, the spiritual journey. And we could also say this other typical story that's associated with Buddhist studies. That is, probably many of you here are familiar with this. That is the story of the Buddha himself, his spiritual journey. There's many different versions of this story, but part of the gist and the version that I'll tell right now is, having grown up a life with incredible privilege, everything he wanted, everything that was needed, and a lot of extra stuff, right? So a way to indulge whatever sensual pleasure one desired. I have a way for that to be, have those experiences. And he was sheltered. His father had some concern about what would happen to him when he was older, so made sure that he had this really sheltered, pleasure-filled life until he's a young man, and he leaves this beautiful palace and encounters old age, sickness, and death, and different individuals. And maybe even some versions of the story says he encountered monastic as well. And deeply affected by this, that Gautama, he's not the Buddha yet, we'll call him Gautama, he wants to find a way. There's got to be a way where there isn't this suffering, this terrible suffering. I don't think he had the idea that he could end old age or that he could end sickness or that he could completely end death, but the suffering part of it. And this is part of the practice, right, is to be able to recognize there's this inevitability of the pain, we might say, the discomforts, the extreme discomforts, we might say, and distinguishing that from the suffering, which is all the story making and all the things that the mind is doing associated with it. This shouldn't be like this. Why is this happening to me? These types of things. So when he Gautama, realizing the futility of these worldly pleasures, goes off and seeks the end of suffering and practices with a number of teachers. Some teachers and realize, yeah, that's not it. Went in a different direction. Yeah, that's not it either. And then near death, having almost starved himself to death, he gained some sustenance, has some insight. It's not about avoiding all worldly pleasures, but it's about using pleasure in a way that's supportive. Sits underneath the Bodhi tree. That's his dedication. He's going to find suffering at the end of suffering. He did find suffering while sitting also. Of course he did. But he also encountered the end of suffering. And there's this way that in so many different ways, this journey that he went on, afterwards he says, about the middle way. He had one extreme of this indulgence and another extreme of asceticism was one of the teachers he followed. And he comes back and shows the middle way, this middle path. The journey is in the middle, not one extreme or the other. So this whole idea of this spiritual journey, of this like movement towards something, this development towards something, you're starting in one place and getting in another place as a journey. It's a common theme in certain this tradition. But something happened this weekend that made me think about this a little bit differently. And I like this idea of a journey, and I could, talk about my own journey, and I'm sure all of you also could talk about journeys that you've been on, spiritual or otherwise, literal or metaphorical. But somebody said, I'm looking forward to this adventure, kind of like talking about practice. And I thought, oh, adventure. I want to go on an adventure. Like adventure, that sounds like fun. It sounds like, something that's exciting and thrilling and, that would be enjoyable. Whereas sometimes this idea of journey, for me, it feels like, oh, okay. Okay, I guess it'll be a lot of some drudgery and trudging through the tough stuff. And, we have this idea of a hero's journey. I don't even know exactly what all the steps are, but I know there's lots of difficulties. There's part of them. And so I kind of associate that with journey. And so I just started to think about, well, what would it be like if we considered this practice, if we just changed the language a little bit and started to talk about it as an adventure instead of part of this spiritual journey, or this journey. Because there's this way in which the language that we use definitely has an impact. And I notice that the way that I speak or think about things or experience things, gets expressed differently, and maybe that's a whole nother talk on like how I just myself use language a little bit differently or how we might do that. But all of us know that language has an impact. I mean, right, we have whole advertising marketing agencies that are built on this, and politicians, right, all this kind of stuff is about how we use language. So what if it's an adventure instead of a journey? What if this idea? So, I have some ways that maybe to think about this. Is that an adventure also maybe implies some novelty, like something new, like to like maybe discover something. Like maybe that first story that I told about was, maybe it was an adventure for this person. Maybe they were just out in the woods or the forest or jungle, whatever, and wow, this is like such an adventure to discover something, and Raiders of the Lost Ark type of thing, this like some archaeological find. But there's this way in which we might say that the purpose or intention of journeys versus adventures are a little bit different. And we might look at this and see as a way as it can support our practice. A journey usually has a defined destination. Usually it has, or a purpose. Spiritual journey, I'm going to develop my spiritual life. I'm going to discover more freedom, peace, ease, nibbana, whatever it is, enlightenment, awakening, happiness, whatever it is for you. There's this way where there's not only is there like a destination, journeys, right? We could journey to San Jose also, but also there's a sense of there's a progression, step 1, step 2, step 3. We go from one place and then the next and then the next. It's only maybe after the completion of step 1 that we go on to the step 2. It's only after getting onto the freeway that we then head south, for example. But there's a way that an adventure maybe has a sense of spontaneity, or this sense of uncertainty. It's not so clear what exactly step 1 and step 2 is, and it's not so clear, like, is there a particular outcome, a particular destination? And there's this way that maybe there's more of an emphasis on just the enjoyment of the experience. Like part of being on an adventure is the experience. It's not the destination. And it turns out this is so important. And this, I would say, this path of practice, using that type of language. Not only to like be present for what's happening, to be here now. So the sense of time is different. It's not like about a destination that will be reached in the future, but it's about an experience that's being had right now. And a sense of enjoyment. There's this sense of the delight of being alive, the delight of being present for our life. Even if our life is difficult, because it's guaranteed there will be difficulties, there will be pain. This is what it means to be human. It's unavoidable. As much as we would like to avoid it, it's not possible. So there's this way of an adventure. There's more of this spontaneity and emphasis on just being in the present of, okay, what's happening? Oh, okay, what's happening next? Instead of like, okay, I got to do this. Okay, I did that. Okay, check. Got to do the next. Check. Right? It has a different attitude, a different way to bring to one's experience. And with this is this sense of adventure. Is also the sense of exploration. Like what? The sense of curiosity. Well, what's happening? What's happening now? And with that is, maybe as an example, is this this idea that if we have this sense that there's a destination, then a difficulty that arises, let's say for a meditation period, for example, and we have this sense of, okay, I want to be settled. I want to have some calmness. I want to have some ease. And then we sit down to meditate and we find that we're really drowsy, and we just find ourselves like drifting off. Has that ever happened to anybody? Yeah, right. This is part of what happens. And then if you have this real clear sense of like, okay, I want something in particular to happen, then this is a real problem, this whole falling asleep, and then you have to fix it, and what are the strategies I have to come up, and what did I do last time, and have I learned anything about it, or dang it, when is this dang meditation period going to end, so that there can be more energy in the room, and I'm not going to fall asleep so much. There's this whole thing that happens. Whereas if this sense of like, okay, this is an adventure, as opposed to this journey that I have to get to the end of when the bell is going to ring, then the sleepiness, the drowsiness, the sloth and torpor, what if that's part of the adventure? Like, wow, look at this. The mind and the body are like shutting down. And just noticing like, wow, what is that like? I mean, this is amazing that human bodies do this, right? That they go, 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 go. And then, sometimes they go to sleep. And what's the difference between sleep and awakeness? And how does the mind do this? Is it all of a sudden a shut off? Or is it a slow slide? Or is there this long time where there's this in between? So if it's an adventure, there could be like some curiosity. And I can recommend this. I've spent a lot of time doing this. It's fascinating to bring some mindfulness when you're really tired, and bring some mindfulness as best you can to this watching I'm doing this with my hands because it kind of feels like this. Feels for me like a slide into sleep. And sometimes even the mindfulness can follow into a little bit of the sleep. It's really amazing. So it's the same experience, sitting down to meditate and encountering a lot of sleepiness. But instead of this journey, like, okay, I got to get it done, it's like, oh, okay, this is part of the adventure. I'm just going to be with what's happening. And this is what's happening. Wow, what is it like? And this shift in relationship, this turns out to be what practice is all about. This is what practice is all about, is this shift in relationship. So first is this journeys, we might say, have this defined purpose and destination, whereas adventures have more of this spontaneity and maybe some unpredictability. So I also talked about how journeys are like step 1, step 2. First you go down. If you want to leave here and get to the freeway, you would probably find your way to, I forgot the name of this street that I drive down so many times. It's a very nice street, I'm sure, but I can't remember the name. And you get Hopkins. Phew, that's it. Just go down Hopkins and get on El Camino, this type of thing. There's this idea of, step by step. And then there can be a sense of, have I finished step 1? Is it time to do step 2? Or I can't wait till step 1 is finished. Whereas with an adventure, it's just, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. So there's this curiosity, this openness. And this openness, this curiosity, what's going to happen next? Instead of, okay, if I'm going to check this off and go to the next step. This curiosity is what helps support this sense of being present, and it also supports this shift in relationship to our experience, which is where the freedom is, which is where the peace and well-being lie with this shift in our relationship. Because all of us have tried to have our life turn out perfect, have all the ducks lined up, and I mean, even if we do get them lined up, they tend to just swim away and do whatever ducks do, right? They don't stay that way. So this idea of an adventure is like just having this curiosity. What's going to happen next? I'm not sure. And it allows this natural unfolding of things, because often there's this way that we want to try to control things. Of course we do. We have this idea, we have this notion that, okay, if the ducks were in a row, then finally I'll be happy. And it'll be like this lasting, reliable happiness. If I could just get these one more duck, I got all these other ones. And I know my life feels like that too. In some kind of way, we could say just like accumulating ducks, but it just seemed like there was endless. Always needed more. Always needed at least one more, and then, oh no, two more. Then, on it goes. So this idea of having a, I'm sorry, I just kind of like lost the train I was on there. I looked at my notes, and my notes have something completely different here. I was talking. What was that?
You were adventuring.
I was adventuring. Thank you. I was talking about this idea now. I remember about wanting a sense of control. So in some ways, we do prefer like this sense of a journey. But I mean, we all, because it seems like it would be predictable and reliable, and that it's going to lead us to where we want to go. But we can also remember this idea of, I'm sure all of us as children, for me, that's what comes up, this idea of adventure. And I was remembering, I think it's true that, I think Disneyland has something that's called the California Adventure. Right? Right? So this is something that, you want to go on. And I said to myself, California Journey, that sounds like a history class. It doesn't sound like the same. It doesn't have the same sense of, what's going to happen here. So we like having this sense of control, but the truth of the matter is we don't control. We don't control nearly what we think we do, as much as we think we do. All of us know this. I was just telling this little business about ducks, right? That's just a good example. The ducks are swimming away or doing whatever they want to do. And in the Buddhist language, we would say that things are arising because of causes and conditions. We're tired during meditation. There's myriad of reasons. It could be maybe we just don't have enough sleep. Maybe we ate a lot. Maybe we feel really warm. Or maybe the mind doesn't really want, maybe it touched into something it's not quite ready to be with yet. So it's a way to distract or not be present for something. Or, maybe we have took some medication, it has as a side effect sleepiness, right? Maybe we don't even know, but there's some physiological reason. Maybe we're getting sick. Sometimes we feel tired. I know I start to feel tired as a sign that I'm like headed towards some illness. There's so many causes and conditions that we don't even know and we don't control. So things arise due to causes and conditions. We don't control them. We aren't making things happen in the way that we think we are. So in some ways, the truth of the matter is, it is an adventure. We're trying to turn it into a journey, but it is an adventure in the sense that it's not we're going to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and arrive exactly where we want to go. Even let's say you are going to drive to San Jose and maybe this is a commute that you do regularly or something like this. It's not always the same. The traffic isn't the same. If you're listening to the radio, that's not the same. The thoughts that you're having isn't the same. The mood that you're having isn't the same. It's never exactly the same. You might have like a brilliant idea one day, and one other day maybe you're just stewed in something. I can't believe they said that, and getting stuck in that or something. The truth is, it's always an adventure in some kind of way, if we allow it to be. And then our life, has some vitality, some juice to it. And maybe one thing that I'll say also is that some of you might know this there's these 7 factors of awakening, these 7 elements, these 7 qualities that support greater peace, ease, and freedom. Dhamma-vicaya is one of the factors of awakening. This often gets translated as investigation, but we could also translate it as exploration, or maybe like curiosity, like just being open to what's happening. So what I'm pointing to here is a support for awakening. It's not, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air and offering it to you, but it's recognize that this is what's required to find more ease and peace. It's also what, as I said, makes our life more interesting. So there's this way in which maybe obstacles can be the adventure. Being in the present moment can be an adventure. Even the idea of, wow, I wish things were different, and how they are, maybe that's an adventure, opening up to what's going to happen next. Because things don't stay the same. We know this. You don't need me to tell you this. They don't stay the same. And it's really amazing if we're present for it, all the different ways in which they change. So I'd like to end with a poem. This won't be surprising. I'm on a kick when I'm often doing this. A different poet, though. Yeah, this is a poet. It's John O'Donoghue. Was a Irish poet and philosopher. It's a little bit different style, but different style than some of the poems I've read in the past. And this poem, it starts off going one direction, and then it makes a turn. And there's a number of different things that we could pull out of this poem, but this idea of having an adventure, I hope, is one that will come out of this. So this is called For a New Beginning by John O'Donoghue. For a New Beginning by John O'Donoghue. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground. Your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. I like that this poem begins in out-of-the-way places of the heart where your thoughts never think to wander. It's pointing to like this, the poem is called A New Beginning, but there's some way in which adventure is a new beginning. It's like a beginning again. And thoughts are kind of the way in which we're trying to solve something, we're trying to fix something, which is important, we need to do that. But there's a part of our life that isn't about solving, isn't about fixing, isn't about planning. It's about opening to. It's about unfurling, allowing ourselves to unfurl in whatever way that means for you. This opening, this allowing, this unfolding. And I would say that this idea of adventure, it feels like an adventure to allow something to unfold or unfurl, to not control it, to trust that it knows how to do this unfolding. And then there's this line in here, or this expression, learn to find ease in risk. Because this is what adventure includes, right? Is risk. But this is what a beginning is going into some uncharted territory. This going into places maybe we haven't been, having new thoughts, having new ideas, having new relationships to experiences. Maybe the experiences are exactly the same. We have the same job, same life situation, same whatever's happening, but something new in the way we're looking at it. A new way in which we are experiencing it, or a new frame of reference in which we're looking at it. And that is the adventure. Like, oh, what if I look at it from this perspective? I always thought of myself as somebody who could just figure everything out myself. And I'm making this up. Well, maybe it is true for myself too. I kind of had this idea like, okay, I can figure this out. I don't need no stinking nobody. I can figure this out, in some kinds of ways this shows up. But then to realize, oh, actually there's something in relationship to other people that we learn about ourselves, that we learn about humanity, that can only be done with others. And so then to start to see some of our experiences, oh, I wonder what this would be like if I were to work on this with somebody else, or if I were to share this with somebody else, or if I were to look at it from how somebody else might look at it. I just bring this as an example, like the exact same life situation, but to maybe do something a little bit different or consider it from a different vantage point. So this learning to find ease in risk, like learning to do something that isn't step 1, step 2, step 3. We need these step 1, 2s, and 3s as well, sometimes, right, to solve problems. But life isn't only about this. And I think the life that we are hoping to have, that's full of vitality and that has a richness and a depth to it, which includes ease and peace and freedom, is an adventure. And maybe it's as simple as using that language, thinking about, okay, let's turn this into an adventure. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go. And maybe that alone, just different language, is something that can allow something new to arise that can be a support for you and your life. So a journey or an adventure. I don't know, right now, today, I'm feeling this idea, like this idea of adventure. There might be another time I'm like, no, it's in a journey and we have to have some perseverance. And, I've given those kinds of talks too. But right now, I like this idea of an adventure. So with that, I'll close and open it up to see if there's some questions or some comments. For you, what's the difference between a journey and an adventure? Or maybe there's an adventure you've been on recently that you'd like to share. So back here.
So if enlightenment is, the Buddha says freedom from suffering, right? Would that be the end destination of the adventure?
Yes. Yeah. No more suffering.
So then, so after that, I don't know, it's no more suffering ever. It can't even bother you. It can't touch you. That's just, you're just there, right? I don't know. Is that what it is?
it's not being pushed around by greed, hatred, or delusion. It's like meeting whatever is happening, but it may be uncomfortable, but it's not suffering. It's like, oh, ouch, and responding appropriately, like meeting each moment fully, completely, without hiding, and with ease. So it's not being, I like this expression I heard somebody use recently. It's not being a bliss blob, just disconnected and different from the world. It's just meeting the world fully and doing what needs to be done.
Can you say a little more about this falling asleep mindfully? I mean, I would love to do this experiment, but it's so counterintuitive because I do the opposite. I let my attention go. So how do you do it?
Well, this was never intentional, and for all I know, maybe it was a dream. So maybe I should. But this was on a retreat so I had a lot of momentum. I had spent quite some time, many hours a day for many days, and just noticing that, sleep is like there was like some kind of like a type of letting go, and yet there was some awareness of that letting go. So maybe I'm making this up and it wasn't mindfulness into sleep, but I know there's like some Buddhist traditions that talk about this lucid dreaming. I wouldn't say I have this lucid dreaming, nor have I aspired to or tried it, but I don't know, is that helpful?
So you have some awareness and you hang on to the awareness a little longer?
So I just talked about language. I'll use language a little bit different here. It's not like I'm hanging onto awareness. It's like there's awareness is there. What was that?
I have to try, see what happens.
Yes, there you go. There you go. You could go on an adventure with it. There you go. Let us know.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to quickly share, just kind of like, I think just in general, like, this is kind of how I've been approaching my life, especially in the last, like, couple to a few years. Literally, I've actually been, like, calling it an adventure when people ask me, like, how I approach life. I can't say that it makes it any easier, but definitely I'm very strong into like trusting the universe and almost like predetermination a little bit, like things are already kind of meant to happen, meant to be like pre-written, almost like a pre-birth plan that we have. Some of these major life circumstances that we go through, almost that they were pre-chosen. So it's like I approach life in more of like a co-creation. Like I don't really have a choice, but I kind of help. I do, like I maybe think I have control over how my life is going to go, but actually it's going to go the way it's going to go, which is not in my control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I feel like when, like no matter, like I tell people a lot all the time, especially lately in the last year or two, that I don't really make decisions anymore. Like I just kind of, not necessarily letting life passively happen to me, but in a way, yeah, just kind of allowing what's happening to happen and trusting that the universe has like a bigger picture at play that I'm not aware of. And just not putting so much importance on my choices and decisions. Like if I feel confused about a relationship or a job decision or something like this, I feel like it's just an adventure. Like I'm just gonna
And how does that make you
let it
feel to use
happen.
this language of adventure? Does it feel like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps me with the stress that I used to have in making decisions. Like, I don't feel as overwhelmed anymore. I actually don't really worry about it because I know people who will like be like, oh, I don't know what job to choose, job A or job B. And then they'll just like worry about it incessantly for like weeks on end or have sleepless nights over it. And for me, like, I've learned that the universe will tell you if you just get quiet and listen. The universe will give you signs. Like, I'm very into synchronicity and angel numbers, and just like everything that crosses my path is a sign for me. And yeah, I just like wait until the last minute and see like what the universe is telling me, and then go with my gut, either direction. So
and it feels like an adventure.
it does,
And does that
exactly.
bring some, I don't know, some, like, I don't excitement or juiciness to your life? Or I'm not sure what word to use there.
Yeah, I mean, I try to use it that way. You know, for example, right now I'm going through a very unsettling situation in my life where mold was found in my apartment, and I've been living in a motel slash out of my home for since Halloween. And so yeah, it's very like a lot of uncertainty where I'm like, oh my gosh, what does my future hold? I don't even know. Am I going to live here? Am I going to live somewhere else? Like, and part of that is an adventure. Like, okay, well, the place where I'm currently living, and trying to look at it that way to make it more manageable and fun to allow myself to cope better.
Yeah, because one thing I can appreciate is what you're pointing to is allowing what's happening, because it is happening. And it's astounding how often we're trying to pretend things aren't happening or trying to push that away. So there's some wisdom in saying, oh, okay, this actually is happening, mold in one's apartment, and okay, this is here. What needs to happen next, or something like this? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then just kind of like think instead of like worrying more about the future. Sure, I'm worried, of course, but also I try to look at it from an adventure standpoint and perspective of almost like I'm watching a movie, like, oh, what's going to happen next? So,
Nice.
yeah, that's just how I live my life. So tonight was, I resonated with it because that's kind of how I think.
Great, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more comment if somebody wants to.
So I think I resonated a lot with what you said over there as well. And what's interesting is that I think I used to have this sort of emotion of surrender, which is you're surrendering to the moment, you're surrendering to what's happening in front of you, and you're living your life, again, not like you're not making decisions, but you're at least letting the universe give you signs about what decisions you should be making, but in some ways you're surrendering to it. But I mean, to your point, words can sometimes change your frame of mind. So adventure makes it a little more interesting than the surrender. I mean, surrender is great. You're letting go of what you are thinking, what you have to make decisions on, etc. But I think the adventure makes it a little more interesting. So that was fascinating today. And talking about science, there's one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, which is all about omens and the science. So if you ever get a chance, you should read that one. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so may your journey home tonight not be an adventure. Just straightforward, find your way home in a nice way. Good night. Thank you, thank you.